Well, good morning from a very autumnal Merrington Carp Fishery in Shropshire. Now we're here for a couple of days and we're going to run you through some tactics in terms of baiting to outwit these really pressured day ticket carp, and hopefully we'll have some lovely scaly fish to show you. So come with us, we'll go show you what we're up to. So Merrington Carp Fishery is made up of 3 lakes. At the moment we're on Hayes Lake, which is the newest lake on site, but it's also home to probably the most 30-pounders on the complex. There's probably well in excess, I'd have thought, of around 50 30s in here, all the way up to around 36, 37, maybe even 38 pound. And there's loads of lovely scaly ones in here. Now just down the bank we've got the main lake, which is a little bit bigger, maybe around 8 acres. Again, that's got well in excess, I think, of 300-400 fish and a load of 30-pounders in there as well. We've also got Merlin Lake out the back, which is more of the runs water, really nice little lake exclusive with free swims on. So if you're fishing with your mates and stuff, it's a lovely little venue to check out. So you really are spoilt for choice at Merrington, but the Hayes Lake is where we're focusing our attention this session. Done a little bit on here in the past, had some lovely fish, and the fishing really can be quite prolific if you get it right. So as I say, it is autumn now, the water's starting to cool down, and there's definitely a few things that we're going to show you in terms of the approach that will hopefully get plenty of those lovely carp on the bank for you. When it comes to bait, on the Hayes Lake there are a few perch and roach, so I didn't want to go out with some maggots and naturals, which I might add we're allowed to use during the winter months. With the water still being on the cool, those are still quite active, so I was conscious that worms and maggots and casters might get the attentions of the perch and the roach. So I'm going for an all-out boilie approach, and I'm going with the 8mm bug. Now I think this is absolutely fantastic if you're creating a feeding response from fish that are otherwise full and kind of not really that busy. They're just kind of almost moving around the lake now, finding where they want to settle for the winter. I don't want great big 15 and 18mm baits because I just think it's quite easy for the fish to ignore them. So these little 8mm bug are brilliant. They kind of almost resemble a pellet on the lake bed, but the beauty is they're not going to break down. So they're going to lay there in a little parcel, ready for when the fish come across them. So I'm going to crumb a few handfuls and leave some whole. I still want some substantial food items nice and close, and they're going to land within the vicinity of the rig. Now when it comes to liquids, I'd be hard pushed between the Calanus and the liver. I'll be honest, I've got no real preference between the two. As long as I've got one or the other in the bag, I'm more than happy. It's lovely and pungent, but it's a natural liquid, so it's not anything synthetic. The fish are going to really enjoy eating the baits that have been soaked in this, and obviously this is going to help bind the crumb and get it down to the lake bed. So a little splash of that. As I say, I'm not going too crazy with how much bait I'm putting out. I just want a nice, subtle, natural trap on the bottom. Now, something that I do all year round that I'm really fastidious about is the use of powders with your bait. Now, these little Evo packs are absolutely perfect. I'm forever getting loads of these and taking them on my sessions and just boosting my hook baits and my free offerings with them. I just think, obviously with a boiled bait, some of the goodness you lose, but with these little packets, the liver powder and the GLM, the spirulina and the betaine, you can really boost that attraction back up and create a lovely attractive little parcel on the lake bed. So what I do is actually decanter them out into little pop-up tubs, and that means I can either dust my hook baits, or in this case add a little dusting into the crumb. There's some liver powder there. I've also got a little bit of rock salt. Again, I want to maximise the attraction, all natural flavours on the bottom, and just create a really tasty little morsel for the carp to home in on. Now, just to help bind that little bit of Calanus liquid, I'll add a little bit of krill meal. The beauty of this, obviously, a lot of it wants to float, so when that's mixed in with the Calanus, it's just going to kind of rise and fall in the water column, just increase that attraction, any fish that might be off the bottom. And again, it's really pungent and strong, but most importantly, it's completely natural, so the fish are going to love eating a bit of that. Again, just a little dusting, just to complement the bug. Got a little bit of the insect meal as well. This absolutely stinks, just like the krill meal. And what I want to do is kind of make a really attractive kind of ground bait with some 8mm boilies in amongst it. So I'm going to give that a little mix. And what you've got there is a super attractive little mix that fish that have been seeing great big boilies all summer long. There's just loads of attraction there, loads of food value, but there's just some 8mm baits that'll be dotted amongst it. There's plenty of smell to make them drop, and some 8mm baits to keep them busy, and hopefully they'll be chowing down on that and come across my balanced little hook bait, and we'll have ourselves a carp. So that's all the talking. Now we've got to let the carp do the rest. Right, so we're going to take the middle rod out. Even though it's quite cool, it's very evident the fish are still kind of using the features. There's a couple of gravel bars in this swim, left and right, and obviously there's the very obvious island out in front, so I'm going to take the boat out there, and that's the real beauty of this, particularly on little venues such as this where the fish are pressured. And get your rods out nice and quietly on the money without having to lead up and make a load of noise. So it might not be to everyone's taste, but I for one like catching them, and I will do whatever is necessary. So we're just coaxing the boat out now, nice and slow. Got the echo here on the screen, so that means I can see the depth changes. I'm going to be coming up to the bar shortly. There we go, and that's just flashing up on the screen. And if we just take it nice and steady now, just let the boat just starting to creep up the shelf, and that's the sort of range we've seen the carp showing off the island. So that is ready to drop about there. Right, that's that there, that's dropped just on that shelf. Perfect little patrol route, I reckon, for a carp travelling around the island. Right, so with it being autumn now, the nights are really starting to draw in and we're rapidly losing the temperature. Now the fish up to now haven't really put on much of a show, so in a couple of shows during the course of the day, but as is typically the case in the autumn, they do tend to put a little bit of a show on, so it's well worth sitting up and staying vigilant. The first few hours of darkness are often when they start to show, so we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled and hopefully we'll have a carp to show you tonight, or if not, in the morning. Right, so last night we did hear quite a few fish, but the majority were definitely down the other end, but we did hear a couple in the corners, and we have since seen one this morning around the front of the island, so there's definitely a few about. The wind's really dropped this morning, and it's been quite interesting just watching tiny little patches of bubbles just appearing, certainly over the middle rod. In the last 10 minutes or so, there's been some real subtle kind of bubbling, fizzing, so whether that's fish just moving over and just letting out gases out their swim bladder, or whether it might be some feeding fish. Whatever it is, it's quite tentative. As I say, it's just tiny little patches of bubbles, but kind of middle of the day time on here, and kind of a lot of day ticket lakes I'm tending to find this time of year. The bites, a lot of the time, will be kind of midday in the first couple hours of darkness, so fingers crossed one will slip up today during this lovely bit of autumnal weather. Right, so when it comes to the lead setup that I'm using, doing something a little bit different, probably more for the fact that these day ticket venues now see an awful lot of pressure. Being a little bit different can often make all the difference. Now, the water's starting to cool, the fish are slowing right down, so what I've opted for is kind of a running lead clip setup. So I've just squashed the swivel that's inside the lead clip. I've got a nice 3-ounce gripper lead, so that's going to hold the bottom, whether I'm putting it on a slope or on any flat ground, that's going to hold perfectly. And obviously when a fish picks it up, it gets a little bit of resistance, and then it's free running, so I'm going to get maximum indication, and ultimately the fish can't use the weight of the lead to throw the rig. As I've said, these day ticket fisheries now are getting more and more pressured. The fish are seeing a similar sort of presentation day in, day out, and being different can often pay dividends. Right, so just had a quick trip to the shop to get a few more supplies. Obviously wound all 3 rods in. That's given me a good opportunity now to reposition the rods. And having seen what I've seen, this middle rod I'm going to put a little bit close to that island, because despite it being quite cool, the fish definitely seem to be liking it out there. So fingers crossed, this drop will pay off and we'll get a carp. So we've just, as you can see, we've just got onto the shelf, and albeit the average depth is probably 7 feet, the fish are definitely liking it out there in that slightly shallower ground. So I'm just going to inch that back. Somewhere around there is going to be where we're going to drop it. Nice. Right, so as you can see out there where that foam's popped up, we're probably 8-9 feet off the island in probably 3.5–4 foot of water. And as I've said, with this sun out today, that seems like it's the sort of area where the fish are going to like to spend a bit of time. So fingers crossed, we'll get a bite on that. Right, so 2 of the 3 rods are out there, and I've stuck with the old little 12mm pop-ups that I've critically balanced, that I've cured in the liver powder. Now, on the 3rd rod, typically this time of year, I would be having kind of dulled down hook baits, but after all the rain we've had, and the fact that haze is a little bit coloured, I am going to change the 1 rod onto something bright. Now, I'm going to stick a 12mm pop-up on, but personally, on pressured venues, I prefer a hook bait where the hook is sitting claw style, so it's not lying on its side, and it's not popped up, it's just kind of hanging in a prone position, ready to make contact with the fish's lips. So, I've got a 12mm PV pop-up. I think yellow, personally, is the most consistent colour. It's certainly a favourite of mine. And all I'm going to do is mount it on that micro ring swivel, like so. Just thread him on, sit that onto the barrel of the swivel. That's one thing to note. The consistency of the DNA pop-ups is really nice. They're not too hard and they're not too soft. You can just get them to sit perfectly poised on that micro hook ring swivel. So just tie that off with a couple of overhand knots, slide those down, just create a nice big knot with 2 overhand knots, snip that away. Now what I'll do with this, obviously being a 12mm pop-up, it's a little bit bigger than the 8mm free offerings that I'm feeding, but what I'll do is I'll snip away at these, and all I'm trying to achieve, I'll keep dropping it in the margins and testing it. I'll just keep nibbling away and testing that in the margins, and I want that to boom away from the lead clip, and it will settle on the lake bed like that with the hook point down. Now the real beauty of that is even when the fish are feeding quite tentatively, it's perfectly balanced. It'll fly up into their mouth, and as you can see, that hook point sitting in a prone position, a little bit of putty there, but with the movement of the braid on the combi rig, whichever direction they come from, the hook is hanging prone and will nab you a fish even when it's feeding really tentatively, which does tend to happen this time of year. I've always found autumn personally not to be as kind of prolific as it's always been spoken about in the past. A lot of the time the fish are full and they're just kind of pecking around small little baited areas, and that'll just fly up in there and hopefully snare us a carp.
Oh, yeah, you're in, mate.
Well then, it's taken a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, but the lake's gone flat calm, and my left-hand rod, which is just kind of fished in the corner, just at the base of the marginal slope. We did hear a fish show there last night. That little parcel of 8mm boilies has been snaffled by, hopefully, a lovely Merrington carp. So it took a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, but given how slow the lake's fishing, it's a little bit of a result. So fingers crossed she stays on. I'll have a Merrington carp to show you shortly. Happy days. that'll certainly do. Like I say, it's taking a little bit longer, but the lake is fishing a little bit hard, so proof in the pudding that the tactics are working, and hopefully I'll have a couple more to show you. Well, there we have it. Lovely Merrington mid-20 mirror. Kind of average stamp this is. There's some real pearlers in here. Proof in the pudding that those little 8mm bug will work wonders for you this autumn. Let's get her back. Right, thank you very much. Hopefully there'll be another bigger one to follow. Happy days. Right, so that's the session done and dusted. One lovely carp to show for our efforts, and I think that's a bit of a result myself. The lake has been fishing slow, and you'll often experience that a little bit on a lot of the venues across the country. As we get the colder rains, the colder nights, the lake temperatures will be dropping and the fishing's a lot more tricky. But hopefully that little few tips and tricks with those little boilies, little parcels of bait, and keeping vigilant to where the fish are showing, put some carp on the bank for you too. Until next time, tight lines.